Good morning. This is Hyperwave. I'm Leah Wald here with Tyler Jenks. And this is going to be a very simple one, which is, are we in phase 7 right now, wave 7? And that's because a lot of you wonderful viewers have been asking the same question. Obviously, what phase are we in? So today, Tyler's going to explain specifically that question. Are we in 7? Tyler, are we?
Great. Thank you, Leah. Yesterday, thank you all for taking a weekend afternoon off to listen to our macroeconomic discussion. In that, Leah had mentioned that besides doing work in a half a dozen other places, she had done some work over in Mongolia and made the comment about that they had one chief export that they're very well known for, and it happens to be one of the best made products in the world, which is cashmere from Mongolia. There's not a lot of it, but I happen to be wearing a sweater from Mongolia from a firm that Leah co-founded, bringing together the producers and keeping it all within the families and the groups over there, and making sure that they were protected in every way they could be. So I just wanted to mention that, just another feather in the cap of my partner.
Thanks, Tyler.
Okay, what we're going to do today is just answer the question very briefly. And the answer is yes, we are in a phase 7. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Just kidding. I'm going to bring up about 6 charts very quickly to show why we are in a phase 7. And that does not in any way contradict anything that we have said up to this time. That does not mean that a phase 7 can't end at phase 3. In this case, it did not. It does not mean that phase 7 cannot end at a phase 2. We don't know because we haven't tested it. It comes in a little over 4,000 and will keep increasing each week. But it in no way says that we are not in a phase 7 and could go all the way back down to the beginning below $1,000. And I want to show you why exactly I am saying that, and have been saying it, but possibly not too clearly because there have been so many questions about it. So what we're going to do is just pull up half a dozen charts, starting with Bitcoin itself. And one of the comments had been, we're sticking around 7,000 for so long. Doesn't that call into question that we're in a phase 7? And my answer is no, it doesn't in any way. In fact, it puts an exclamation point on the fact we are in a phase 7. And that's what I'd like to demonstrate. What you're looking at right now is Bitcoin on a daily basis from the peak at 19,666 to where we are today. And this is what people are talking about, this little bit over here. Let me just make this a little bigger. This is all right around the 7,000 level, which has been going on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days. And it's fairly flat, but that comment was made before last night, in which we dropped 300 points down to 6707 now. And that's the kind of action you will see in a phase 7. It will attempt to lure investors into thinking that a bottom is forming, to get more people to put money in so that the markets can take it away once again. And to show that, I'm going to go to a bigger picture of Hyperwave on Bitcoin, going all the way back to $500, right before we had a 40x run up. And I've superimposed the Fibonacci numbers from the base all the way to the top. And one of the things you see is that we broke down through 8,065, which happened to be right around the area of our phase 3 that had held for almost 5 weeks before dropping below 8,065 and now consolidating between the two Fibonacci lines at 8,065 and 4,910. For us to get down to phase 2, we're going to have to drop below this Fibonacci line at 4,900, unless prices simply go sideways long enough for the phase 2 line to come up to 45 or 4,600, in which case we'll talk about it at that point. But there will be support down here between 4,900 and 5,000 on the way down to 4,000. And remember, we still have not taken out this low from now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks ago, which was on February the 4th. We are still above that. That will provide a tiny bit of support. The 5,000 level will give us a tiny bit of support, but this is one of the clearest 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 waves that a hyperwave can give you. If it goes all the way down to 1,000, it'll be perfect. If it had stopped at 8,000 at phase 3, that would be funky. If it stops at 4,000, that would be funky. And I use the term funky to mean rare, strange, something different going on, because then it would be setting up for another hyperwave from a lower level without completing this one. And we don't know which way it's going to go. We don't know if it was going to hold phase 3. We do not know if it's going to hold phase 4, in which case, excuse me, if it's going to hold phase 2, in which case it will become a perfect hyperwave and go back below 1,000. That does not mean at that point that we can't start another one, because we've already seen 2 others before this one. Okay, so to me, there is no question that we have been in a phase 7 hyperwave since the peak of this phase 6 up around 17,500. From that point on, as we begin down, we are in a phase 7. Let's take a look at some examples over time. This is the silver chart. Now, I've put an interesting perspective on this because I've got 2 hyperwaves going. This is the first one that was at the end of the 1970s. And all you're looking at is the collapse of silver from $48 approximately all the way down to a low in 1993 and again in 2002. All of this is phase 7. And it took from 1982 until initially 1993, 11 years to complete phase 7. Let's take a look at gold. This is the back end of gold. You're looking at phase 7 of gold after the run up from $35 all the way to $880. Then the collapse in phase 5 The move back up in phase 6 that caught a lot of people thinking that here we go again, which is what a phase 6 does, and took us all the way from 475 all the way back up over 700 before phase 7 started. Now notice in phase 7, these periods of times. Now this happens to be a monthly chart, which is not what I use, but just to be able to save on space. So these are monthly bars. And here, right at the $500 level, we went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months hanging around $500 above and below it before phase 7 continued. Right now, we've only gone a number of days in Bitcoin at the 7,000 level. In that gold chart, we went that many months holding a level before collapsing further. And after that collapse, we dropped all the way down to $325 before a big move up that people were sure was the end of phase 7 and the beginning of some new big move up, because we went all the way up to 525 on that bounce before phase 7 took its grip again and brought us down even lower than this peak, than this trough. And there happened to be another one that came another 10 years later that took us down to 265, but no need to show that. What I'm showing you is how phase 7s act. Here is the Nasdaq, the run up to the year 2000, which we've talked about over and over again. But I want you to focus on phase 7. Now, we know that the Nasdaq didn't go all the way down as low as it had been in its phase 1, and that resulted in a funky hyperwave, this one being nested in a larger one that came 10, 15 years later. But I want you to just look at this hyperwave because it's so similar to Bitcoin. Obviously, the 4, the 5, and the 6. Then the drop down. This is a weekly chart, so this gives you a little bit better perspective relative to Bitcoin. These are a number of weeks, 6 weeks, in which we held between 3,000 and 3,400 on the Nasdaq. Slightly lower than this low. Remember, on Bitcoin, we've got another low we're trying to take out right now. That's what I believe this is very similar to, before giving way and then trying to rally, giving way, trying to rally, giving away again, trying to rally. And these are weeks, each of the bars. So we're talking about a phase 7 that begins in July of the year 2000. And we don't get to the bottom of 7 until 2.5 years later. And then my favorite, the one I wanted to show everybody yesterday, which is the 30-year T-bond yield, with yields going up from 1942 until 1980. 40 years of yields going up in a massive hyperwave, with the 5 crash, 6 response, and the beginning of 7, which then went through periods of time that lasted years on the way down and is still going down as of today. 40 years later. So very quickly, yes, we are in phase 7 of a hyperwave. We have taken out one area of support that I was hoping we could hold, which was around the 8,000 level where the phase 3 line came in. We are now in no man's land between that phase 3 line, which no longer exists because it was broken, and the phase 2 line, which is slightly over 4,000 and going up every week. We will get to 4,000 according to Hyperwave, and we may or may not hold it. I'm hoping we hold it and go into another funky hyperwave that never got back to its phase 1 line, but you cannot rely on that as an investment thesis. The overwhelming evidence is that we will complete phase 7 down below 1,000. And let's hope that is not the case, but let's plan that it might very well be. And with that, that's my answer to the question. Are we in phase 7 in Bitcoin?
Well, thank you everybody for watching. Oh, I always get reverb. Sorry if that's not the news you guys wanted this morning. And definitely, though, it will be interesting. I saw one of your live chats that following NVIDIA and AMD will be very interesting, as well as talking more about where potentially the right investment should be of putting your money as this starts to develop. So those will be more fun conversations. But again, thanks for watching. Thanks for your great questions. We look forward to more of your great questions, and have a great day.
Great. Thank you, everybody.